Have you ever sat in a dark movie theater, the lights dimming, the excitement building, only to have your hard-earned escape completely shattered by the blinding, retina-searing glow of an entitled stranger's smartphone? We've all been there. You sit there, trapped, feeling your blood pressure rise while they act like they're in their own living room. You want to scream. You want to throw something. Well, what if you did throw something? Today's story is a masterclass in petty, undetectable, psychological warfare. It proves that sometimes the best way to handle a theater nuisance isn't to cause a scene. It's to become a phantom. If you've ever dreamed of serving cold, sweet justice to someone who flagrantly disrespected you and everyone else around them, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and get comfortable because you are going to want to take notes on this one. Get ready for one of the most satisfying, hilariously executed revenge stories you'll hear today. Let's dive in. Let's set a scene. It's a few years ago. I had been looking forward to this evening all week. You know that feeling when you finally get a few hours to yourself? You buy the overpriced ticket, you secure the snacks, and you sink into that plush theater seat. The movie was Inside Out 2. Now, the irony of going to see a movie entirely focused on emotional regulation and ending up boiling with absolute, unadulterated anger is not lost on me. The theater was decently full. I found my seat, perfect view, right in the middle. I settled in, popped open my bag of gummy worms, and let out a deep breath as the trailers ended and the theater went pitch black, the sanctuary of the cinema. But right in front of me sat a trio that was about to test every ounce of my patience. It was two adult women and a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Now, kids in theaters can be hit or miss, but honestly, the kid wasn't the problem. The problem was the adults who were supposed to be setting an example. From the moment the opening logos flashed on the screen, these two women were whispering, and by whispering, I mean that aggressive, totally audible murmuring that completely cuts through the dialogue of the movie. But the talking, I could almost tune out. What I couldn't tune out was the light. One of the women, let's call her Brenda, pulled out her phone. And she didn't just check the time, guys. She unlocked it. And let me tell you, this woman must have had her screen brightness set to surface of the sun. It was at absolute 100% maximum capacity. In a pitch black theater, a phone on full brightness isn't just a distraction. It's a lighthouse beam shining directly into your retinas. It completely destroys your night vision. You stop looking at a massive 50-foot screen you paid $20 to look at, and your eyes are involuntarily glued to the glowing rectangle of Brenda scrolling through Facebook, completely oblivious to the world around her. At first, you give people the benefit of the doubt, right? You think, okay, maybe it's an emergency text. Maybe she's just checking something real quick and it'll go away. 5 minutes go by. The phone is still out. She's tapping away. 10 minutes go by. The whispering continues. The phone goes away for 30 seconds, only to be yanked right back out, lighting up my face like I'm being interrogated by the FBI. It was incredibly disruptive. And you know that feeling, right? That specific tight knot in your chest when someone is blatantly violating the unspoken social contract. It's not just about the movie. It's about the sheer disrespect. It's the arrogance of sitting in a room with 50 other people and broadcasting through your actions that your text messages are more important than everyone else's experience. My jaw was clenched. I shifted in my seat. I coughed loudly. I tried the classic heavy sigh. You know, the passive-aggressive acoustic signals we all use to say, hey, you're bothering me, without actually starting a confrontation. Nothing. Not even a flinch. I sat there debating my options. Option A. Tap her on the shoulder and ask her to put it away. But we all know how people like this react. They don't apologize. They get defensive. They act like you're the crazy one for demanding basic manners. It turns into an argument, and then the movie is ruined for everyone. Option B. Get up, miss the movie, find an usher, complain, and wait for a teenager making minimum wage to come in and awkwardly tell her to stop. Option C. Suffer in silence. I didn't like any of those options. I felt completely powerless. I wanted justice, but I wanted it cleanly. And that's when my fingers brushed against the crinkling plastic resting in my lap. The gummy worms. I looked down into the bag. Now let's talk about the ballistics of a gummy worm. They are the perfect projectile. They have just enough density to fly straight, but they're soft enough that they won't cause actual injury. They make a highly satisfying dull thud upon impact, and most importantly, they are completely silent when fired. But as I pulled a long, neon-colored worm from the bag, a thought crossed my mind. I am not wasting a whole gummy worm on this woman. I paid good money for these snacks. She was already stealing my movie experience. I wasn't going to let her steal my caloric joy too. So in a moment of frugality meeting tactical genius, I brought the worm to my mouth and bit it clean in half. I chewed the first half. It was delicious. The second half, however, was suddenly weaponized. I sat back. I held the sticky half worm between my thumb and index finger. I calculated the distance. She was in the seat directly in front of me, slightly to the right. The angle was clear. I needed a trajectory that would clear the headrest, but drop perfectly into her personal space. This required extreme stealth. The key to this operation was plausible deniability. If she caught me, I was just a weird guy throwing candy. But if she didn't catch me, I was a ghost. I was karma incarnate. The movie was playing. The theater was dark, except for the obnoxious, glaring beacon of her smartphone. I wound back my arm. A quick flick of the wrist. The gummy worm sailed through the dark air of the theater. Time seemed to slow down. I watched its neon silhouette arc perfectly over the black leather of the seat in front of me. Smack. I didn't miss. It hit her perfectly. Instantly, my hand dropped to my lap. My spine straightened. My eyes locked onto the movie screen with the intense, unblinking focus of a monk in deep meditation. My facial expression went entirely blank. In my peripheral vision, I saw it happen. Brenda physically jolted. The blinding screen dipped as she whipped her head around. She peered over the top of her seat, scanning the darkness behind her. Her eyes landed on me. I could feel her staring daggers into the side of my head, but I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just kept watching Inside Out 2 like I was analyzing it for a college thesis. I chewed my popcorn rhythmically, completely unbothered. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Was it this guy? No, he's just watching the movie. Did something fall from the ceiling? She couldn't figure it out. Defeated, she slowly turned back around. Inside, I was throwing a parade. My heart was pounding with the thrill of the hunt. I had struck a blow for polite moviegoers everywhere. Surely, I thought, she would realize the universe was sending her a message. Surely Surely she would put the phone away now, but entitlement is a stubborn disease. Barely a minute passed. I saw the glow shift. I heard the whispering start up again. She was back on the phone, still on full brightness, still murmuring to her friend. It was an absolute slap in the face. The sheer audacity. It wasn't just ignorance anymore. It was willful defiance of basic human decency. She had been warned by the candy gods, and she chose to ignore the warning. Fine. If it's a war of attrition she wanted, it's a war of attrition she was going to get. I reached into the bag. My fingers bypassed the red ones, bypassed the green ones. I found a blue and orange one, a heavy hitter. Once again, I bit it in half. I savored the sugar. I loaded the remaining half into the chamber of my fingertips. I waited for the perfect moment. I waited for a quiet scene in the movie, where any disruption would feel even more invasive. The phone was glaring. The target was acquired. Flick. The second half worm launched into the abyss. The trajectory was flawless. Whack. This time, the reaction wasn't just a jolt. It was an explosion. Brenda violently spun around in her seat, practically climbing over the headrest, her eyes wide with fury. She looked directly at me, her face illuminated by the very screen that had caused this entire conflict, and she aggressively, loudly whispered, "Stop it!" The moment she yelled, the tension in the theater skyrocketed. But me? I was stoned. I was ice. I was a masterclass in gaslighting. When she yelled, "Stop it!" at me, I didn't react defensively. I didn't say, "Stop what?" I didn't even look at her right away. I slowly pulled my eyes away from the screen, blinked a few times like a man rudely awakened from a beautiful dream, and looked at her with an expression of pure, unadulterated, innocent confusion. I looked at her as if she were speaking a foreign language. Then, I just slowly turned my head back to the screen. It broke her brain. She was furious, but my utter lack of guilt gave her nothing to work with. Frustrated, she turned to the woman next to her and the little girl. "He's throwing gummy worms at me," she hissed loudly. Now, all three of them turned around, three heads peering over the seats, glaring at me. I maintained my absolute stoic silence, eyes glued to the animated emotions on the big screen, eating my popcorn one kernel at a time. They looked at me. They looked into the dark rows behind me, trying to see who the phantom sniper could possibly be. They began frantically murmuring to each other, a rapid-fire conspiracy theory session right there in row F. And then, the climax, the absolute pinnacle of this entire story. The little 7 or 8-year-old girl, the one who had just been dragged to this movie by these two oblivious adults, squinted at me through the darkness. She evaluated my perfectly innocent posture, my blank stare, and my rhythmic popcorn chewing. She turned back to Brenda, pointed a tiny finger in my direction, and said, "Well, it definitely wasn't that guy. When I tell you, it took every fiber of my being, every ounce of my willpower, not to burst out laughing right there in the theater. I mean it. I was biting the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. I had an alibi, and it was provided by the enemy's own ranks. It was glorious." Defeated by her own child's ironclad defense of my innocence, Brenda and her friend slowly turned back around. For a few seconds, the phone remained on, but the psychological damage was done. She was spooked. She didn't know where the gummy worms came from. She didn't know when the next strike would happen. The dark ceiling of the theater must have felt like it was full of invisible assassins. Slowly, gracefully, I watched the brightness slider on her phone go down. Then, a few minutes later, the screen went black. The phone was put away, and the whispering completely stopped. They shut up for the entire rest of the movie. At one point, Brenda actually stood up and left the theater for a few minutes. I can only presume she went out to the lobby to complain to the staff that someone in the dark was launching sugary artillery at her head. But no one came. No ushers with flashlights. No managers. Because what was she going to say? Someone threw candy at me while I was ruining the movie for everyone else? Nothing came of it. I sat there, chewing the rest of my gummy worms, fully whole this time, and enjoyed the remainder of Inside Out, to an absolute blissful peace. The silence had never sounded so good. You know, there's a lot of debate about how to handle public nuisances. Some people say you should always take a high road, confront them politely, or get management involved. But honestly, sometimes the high road is just a paved path to more frustration. Sometimes people who lack self-awareness need a little physical feedback from the universe. So, I'll leave you with this piece of advice for future reference. If you ever see someone loudly talking or blasting their phone on max brightness in a dark movie theater, just throw a piece of candy at them. As long as you commit to the performance, they will never know who did it. If this story gave you the chills of sweet petty justice, smash that like button right now. It really helps the channel out. Now, I want to hear from you. Head down to the comments and tell me, what is the most satisfying petty revenge you have ever witnessed or executed in public? Let's get a master thread of justice going down there. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss out on these stories. Until next time, keep your screens dim and keep your gummy worms ready. See ya!